and welcome to the trial run of the Gazeta Brasil Podcast. I'm not sure if that's a thing, but we're just trying this one out. First of all, a wee apology for the potential audio quality issues. I have been meaning to buy a new dictaphone for quite a while now. I'm obviously accepting donations as well. And once I get that, I've got a pretty cool lapel mic which will make for some great audio. But for now, I'll have to make do with some average microphone setup. So, just bear with us on that. And actually, to be honest, today, this little mini episode is more for my own benefit, just to see how easy it is to actually do something like this. Record something, put it out there. So it's not going to be anything spectacular, but let me know what you think about it. Basically, what I'd like to talk about today is just looking forward to the big match tonight in Brazil, in the Brazilian Championship, which is going to be Palmeiras against Flamengo, which will be on at about 10 o'clock local time this evening. That is going to be your first against second. Huge match in the league. We've only got a couple of months left to go, so this really could be a decisive one. What I would suggest is I wrote a preview for the game on the Gazeta Brasil blog. Did that a couple of days ago, and that goes into detail on both the sides, how they've managed to reach the top of the table, and a little bit on what to expect from both of them. There's also a nice bit of context on the little bit of animosity that's between the two teams, which kind of goes back to the 2009 season where the two sides were in kind of comparable situations. And wherever I'm going to upload this episodes on YouTube, maybe on the blog or on Internet Archive, something like that, I'll include a link to that blog post, the match preview. So I suggest that you read that before we go on, or you can read it as you're listening as a kind of companion piece. Anyway, be sure to read it. It's kind of important. But what I'd like to talk about today, because in that preview I kind of already went into previewing the match itself, but what I'd like to do today is just talk about this idea of this game being a kind of title decider, being like an early premature final, that sort of thing. It's being discussed everywhere in the Brazilian media, and a few people even brought up this idea with me when I put the preview on, suggesting that I'm jumping the gun by even making the inference that this match could end up deciding the Brazilian title this year. And, of course, there are plenty of games to go. There are plenty of twists and turns still to come in this league season. So obviously this is not going to decide who's going to win the league, but I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that this game is going to play a big part in that. It's going to be important to the title race, because it's first against second, and they're just, if you look at the league table, you've got Palmeiras and Flamengo on top, just a 1 point separating them, and the other chasing sides are a little bit further back. So Palmeiras and Flamengo are just looking to kind of put a bit of distance between them and the rest of the chasing pack. So, a win for either side would be really quite important in that kind of title race. But to be honest, I think that we're looking at this one not so much as, the winner is going to have the best chance of winning the title. I think this one, the focus here is going to be on Palmeiras, because a win for them tonight would give them a 4-point cushion on Flamengo, which, in my honest opinion, I think, even though we've got so much time left to go, in my honest opinion, that 4 points is a little bit too much for Flamengo to claw back. Because if you read the blog post, and I hope you read it or are reading it at the moment, you'll see that I separate a couple of statistics of Flamengo's performances, and when you look at how they rank in comparison to the rest of the league in terms of things like number of goals scored or number of goals conceded, they're actually they're not doing that well. They don't score that many goals, and they actually concede quite a few goals. Certainly, they don't have the kind of numbers you'd expect for a team who are only 1 point off the top. And also, if you look a little deeper and into their number of shots on target, which is known to be a kind of fairly reliable indicator of like team performance, their shots on target does not rank very well in comparison with the other title challengers. So that would kind of indicate that Flamengo are on good form at the moment, but that's going to cool off a little bit, and they will probably not be in that kind of second position for long, like in the long term, as we head into the final stretch of the tournament. And also, according to the numbers of the superb Twitter account, it's Elf Tegen Elf. I think that's how you say it. It's like 11 against 11 in German or Dutch. I'm not sure. But anyway, excellent Twitter account. The guy who goes through using all these sorts of really geeky football statistics like expected goals, and he does like pass maps and all that sort of stuff. For me, it's basically a dream come true to have that sort of resource available. And luckily for all of us, this lovely fellow has taken a bit of an interest in the Brazilian league as well. So we've got these excellent stats that he's posting all the time on Brazilian football, as well as, other leagues around the world. So, make sure and check him out. Give him a thank you for all the good work that he's doing. But anyway, so if you look at his work, basically he posted up today under my own request, thank you for that again, the updated rankings of the Brazilian Championship in terms of expected goals. Now, expected goals is a kind of fancy football hipster term, but it has a lot of, really quite strong foundations in terms of statistics. It takes the shots that each team have in a match, and ranks those shots or rates those shots in terms of how likely those shots are to transform into goals. And so it gives you a kind of ratio, it gives you a kind of a figure for being able to predict matches. A team with higher expected goals is more often than not going to end up at the top end of the table. You can see that going through all of Europe's major leagues, all of the work that's been put in by all these sorts of football statistic blogs and things like that. The team who wins the league at the end of the year is invariably the team which has the highest expected goals ratio throughout the season. And when you look at the expected goals for the Brazilian season at the moment, at this current spot, you see at the top we have Palmeiras, who are obviously leading the league, and they lead the expected goals ranking. But when you're looking for Flamengo, they're not sitting in second position. They're down at the moment in sixth position behind Fluminense, Cruzeiro, Atlético Mineiro, and Corinthians. So looking at Flamengo being ranked sixth in the expected goals table, that would suggest to you that them being in second place in the overall standings is due to a bit of good fortune, and perhaps, staying up the kind of first, second, and third position is perhaps a bit untenable for Flamengo in the long term. And so that, that's my kind of reasoning to suggest that if Palmeiras were to open a 4-point cushion, that it seems that Flamengo at some point, whether it be in the next couple of weeks or whether it be, in a couple of months or something like that, near the end of the season, it does suggest that their form is going to drop off eventually. So that kind of makes me think that 4 points between Palmeiras and Flamengo at this stage might just end up being a little bit too much for Flamengo to claw back. And, they are a good team. Flamengo are a good team, but they're not a dominant team. They don't dominate matches. They don't, their matches are usually quite tight, which is unlike Palmeiras, who, as we have seen recently, are able to dominate teams, but they're also able to go away to strong sides like Grêmio, for example, at the weekend. They played poorly in that game, but still managed to come away with a result, a little draw, which is very good if you're going away to play Grêmio. So, that makes me think that if Palmeiras win this one, that they're going to have a good chance of maintaining their form and ending up in the top spot. Now, of course, if Flamengo win, situations change because Palmeiras would automatically drop to second place. And with another difficult game coming up for them at the weekend, they're playing their close rivals Corinthians on Saturday evening. With that other difficult game coming up, they would run the risk of really being kind of swallowed back up into that kind of 3 or 4 horse race title challenge once again. So that would really change situations. So yeah, just to sum up, I'm not saying that this match is going to tell us who's going to win the league. I'm just saying that if Palmeiras do win it, I think their chances of going on and winning the league are going to be dramatically increased, and it's going to be really difficult for any of the other challengers to catch up with them. Not saying it's impossible, obviously stranger things have happened. Now, just to finish off this little podcast trial run test sort of thing, I'm just going to add a few little updates to the preview post that I've got there, a bit of team news. So starting with Palmeiras, something that they have been known for throughout this season, their manager Cuca, he likes to play his cards really quite close to his chest in terms of his starting 11, and which is, it's common practice in Europe for teams to only announce their starting lineup just before the game. But in Brazil, it's not so common, and usually you've got managers who like to kind of give the starting 11 in the press conference the day before, all that sort of stuff. But Cuca always likes to, as they say in Brazil, make a bit of a mystery out of the whole thing. So, we don't know exactly how they're going to line up. There are 2 kind of burning questions, I think, in terms of Palmeiras' starting 11. The first one comes in the midfield, because Palmeiras generally they play a kind of 4-3-3 system, but the composition of that midfield usually depends on the opponent. It depends on the situation of the match. Usually when they're playing at home and they're playing against weaker opponents, what they'll have 2 creative kind of playmaker figures in the centre midfield with Moises and Clayton Xavier. And in that third spot, they will have the incredibly industrious Che, who is really quite an amazing player to watch, because he starts in the centre midfield, then he pops up at right back, then he pops up at left wing, and then he pops up at centre forward, and the amount of ground he covers during a match is really quite incredible, and it's very, very useful for Palmeiras to have him in their team, because at any given point they can have, they can outnumber their opposition just thanks to Che just roaming all over the pitch and following the ball, essentially. Really quite impressive. But yeah, so that's their basic midfield when they're playing at home or against weaker opposition, a bit more attacking. But when they're playing away from home or in a kind of against a really difficult opponent, they like to change that up a little bit and bring in one player who is a bit more defensive minded and take out one of the creative midfielders. So usually the player who comes in is the defensive midfielder Gabriel, and there's also a chance of Thiago Santos playing there, who is a kind of midfield destroyer. He's really pretty incredible at winning the ball back and breaking up play, but his problem is that he seems to never have learned how to pass a ball. He's in that kind of Gilberto Silva, Felipe Melo kind of mould, which is a bit outdated in modern football. He really has no idea how to play a pass. So it's more likely that you'll see Gabriel sitting there in the defensive midfield, and then usually Clayton Xavier will go to the bench. So you will have Gabriel sitting in front of the defence with Che running around, everywhere, and Moises as the other central midfielder, as the playmaker, the kind of main playmaker of the side. So you would suggest that tonight, because they're playing at home, they will go for the more attacking lineup with Moises and Clayton Xavier both playing, two creative passers in there. But because of how important this one is, and also because Flamengo have got quite a lot of kind of creative attacking talent in that kind of zone, I think Coca might just go a little bit more conservative and start with Gabriel just in front of the defence. We'll see about that, but I think that's what he'll do. The other question is up front in that front three. Usually the first choice centre forward is the Manchester City bound wonder kid Gabriel Jesus, but he's injured tonight. Yeah, he has a groin injury that he picked up in the weekend's game against Grêmio. A lot of suggestions that he picked up the injury because he's been overworked recently. I don't quite buy that. I don't think he got injured because he's been overworked or he's been played too much. But I think that definitely his increased levels of fatigue are just, they're really extending the recovery time that is necessary for him to come back. So I think that, that's where the overworking comes into play. Not necessarily in the injury itself, but more in the recovery. Now, judging from what we've seen from training sessions in the last few days, he probably is actually fit enough to play at some point. Whether that be, for a whole half or for, maybe 20 minutes at the end, something like that. He probably is fit enough to play, but I doubt we will see him play at any point. I don't think he's going to get off the bench, especially because Palmeiras have got Corinthians on Saturday. So, if he will be fit, if they can start him against Corinthians, that would be a huge help for them. There's obviously talk, though, that the injury is actually a bit more serious and he will miss tonight's game, he'll miss the game against Corinthians, and he will possibly even miss the game in the next midweek as well, but we'll see how that goes. I'm not so sure about that. So that means with no Gabriel Jesus, Palmeiras are probably going to start with a kind of target man, number 9, so that will be either Rafael Marques or the Paraguayan international Lucas Barrios. There's another alternative that Palmeiras do play sometimes in the front three, which is to play kind of 3 kind of speedy attackers in Dudu, Eric, and Jorge Guedes. But that's a formation that's totally built towards the counter-attack, and that's something which you would expect to see from Palmeiras when they play away from home, really. And I don't think they'll do that. I think they really need a big presence up there, someone to hold up the ball, someone to keep possession in the Flamengo half. So I think we'll see Rafael Marques or maybe Lucas Barrios. Now, just moving on to Flamengo. So there's not going to be a lot of changes there. Flamengo have kept quite a regular starting 11 for the last few weeks. What we will see is Everton, the winger, coming in for Fernandinho. Everton was injured recently, so he's going to be back. Leandro Damião is going to start up front. He's been on kind of decent form recently. There was talk about the Peruvian centre forward Paulo Guerreiro returning tonight after he had a bit of a bout of illness. I think it was a stomach bug, something like that. Maybe overdid it on the feijoada. But latest reports are that he's still not completely fit, so he's probably not going to start. We'll see Leandro Damião starting this one for Flamengo. Now, of course, so Palmeiras are favourites. There's no doubts about that. They are the best team in the league at the moment, and they're playing at home. But it's certainly not going to be an easy one for them with the build-up to the game, the pressure that's being put on both sides. There is more pressure now on Palmeiras because they are the better team, and because they're at home, and because they're first in the league at the moment. They're the ones under pressure. Flamengo can go away from this one Flamengo can go away from this one with a draw, and they'll probably be quite happy. But yeah, I'm very excited to see how this one goes. Should be one of those really memorable matches that when we're looking back on the 2016 season, we'll look back at this particular game as being decisive. At least I think it's going to be decisive. Let's see. Or well, ask me again in a few weeks. So, that's all for this Gazeta Brasil cast. Gazeta cast. Gazeta Pod. Oh, God, don't know. I'll work on that name. I hope you enjoy the game, and I hope you enjoyed this little podcast adventure. We're going to be filming a new Gazetinha episode tomorrow afternoon, so look for that going up on YouTube kind of late on Thursday or early doors on Friday morning. If you have any feedback on this kind of audio format, the podcast, all that sort of stuff, I'd love to hear it, because actually, like my initial plan for this whole kind of Gazeta Brasil thing was, instead of doing like videos or a blog or all that sort of stuff, the initial plan was just to do a podcast, because like I love podcasts, and I'm really kind of passionate about them, and I've always wanted to do my own about Brazilian football, but I'm really picky about podcasts. The ones that I listen to, the audio quality has to be really good, and sometimes it really kind of stresses me out when you've got like a podcast where you have like people being interviewed on Skype and things like that, and the audio quality isn't good, and then there's like a delay in asking the questions and stuff like that. I find it really hard to kind of put up with that. So this is a bit of hypocrisy, me putting out this kind of episode, recording with like a really crappy little mic, and expecting people to listen to it. But yeah, if you have any feedback on it, please let me know, because I really would like to kind of explore this medium and see what we can do with it, see if we can put out something that people would want to listen to. So get in touch with me on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way. At Euan Marshall, Euan with a U, EUAN. Or you can send us an email at the blog, which is Gazeta Football Brasil. So Brasil spelled in the kind of the Portuguese spelling, so BRASIL. So Gazeta Football Brasil at gmail.com. If you send us an email there, we will read that and take your feedback into consideration. So anyway, until next time, I'm Euan Marshall saying ciao e até mais. Enjoy the game.